Okay, I'm gonna pretend I've got enough room. But it's very light. Okay guys, got new 3D printing files, and this time it is for a hula hoop. Now this is printed in 8 different pieces, and as you can see, this is one whole piece. Now it is quite large, so you do need either quite a tall printer, or you can slice it in half if you want and print it flat, but I recommend printing it as one piece because this way you don't have to do any gluing, and the button that locks into the other pieces is already fully functional. Now you can push it in, and there is a little bit of a flex, but it's strong enough as it won't come out. Also, when you print it upright, you can see that we've got a little fuzzy skin enabled here, and with that fuzzy skin it gives us extra grip, so it is really nice like that. Look at that up close. So no need for extra grip tape. And you can see that each segment has 2 protrusions on the segment. I will include an alternate file that has no protrusions like that, no little bumps like that. An important thing about hula hoops is the weight and size. Now the weight can be calculated using your slicing software. So for example, this is using 4 different segments. So if we have them all enabled in the slicer, of course you're not going to print all 8 at once because you're risking failure printing it that high. So anyway, to calculate your height, have them all on one bed, all 8, and just slice the software, and it'll give you an accurate reading of how much weight is going to be. A typical hula hoop is around 1 lb, which is 1 pound, which is around 450 grams, so I would go with that. So if you open up the project file that I include in the listing and enable all 8 pieces on the bed and slice the project, you will notice it's around 450 grams. If you want a weighted hula hoop, you can increase the amount of perimeters, infill to increase the weight, but just repeat the same process. Have all of them on your bed, slice the file, and you will get a pretty accurate reading of how much grams is going to be in total. But yeah, regarding fuzzy skin, as you can see, it looks lovely throughout the whole segment, except if you see at the head, I have the fuzzy skin disabled. This is so that it would go into the bottom of the segment easily, and nothing would be getting in the way of the head, so that it goes into the bottom side of the segment smoothly. Also, since it's such a tall print, you're going to see imperfections, but if you have fuzzy skin enabled, you can't even tell that it's 3D printed, so you know, it really works really well. Now usually when printing tall segments like these, I would advise printing these on a smooth PEI sheet using PETG. However, all of these pieces are printed in PLA+. Now I'll be honest, the only reason I use PLA+ is because I got colourful filaments and I thought I'd use them up. And even with PLA+, it actually stuck to the PEI bed really well, and it didn't topple over. I do advise keeping the speed pretty small, around 40 millimeters per second, and that way you pose less of a chance of it toppling over while printing. Regarding my settings in the Prusa Slicer project, I did use a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. However, for the line width, I set it to 0.8 millimeters. So even though I use a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, you can push out thicker lines with it. So I found that the max you can push it to is 0.8 millimeters. Anything higher than that and you will get problems. I did try printing this at 1 millimeter layer lines with a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, but that did eventually topple over when it reached the head. So I do advise not going over 0.8 millimeters line width. I had gap fill off, and since I'm using PLA+, I had my nozzle X set to 230 degrees. Anyway, once you get these printed off, you see you will have the brim here. So let's get this brim off and let's just detach it. And if you don't think it's smooth enough, you can just use a bit of sandpaper just to smooth it out. So here we go. That's all you really need, just to smooth it out for each side, and I'm going to repeat that for all the segments. We're going to now actually assemble the whole circular hoop. But before we assemble the whole thing, let's just give it a test to make sure that these go in nicely. So if we have a look at the bottom of these, you can see that there's only one way that you can actually push them in. There's no way you can get it wrong. So you see the little bump here, it's thin enough to be able to push it in and out a little bit, but it's not thin enough to break. Now to put them in easily, I advise putting it in like this, and then once it's slightly in, put your thumb here and pull it to yourself like that, and it should go in very easily. Well, I wouldn't say easily, with quite a lot of force, because you do not want the hula hoop to come apart once you're hula hooping. And then to take it apart, it's pretty much the same principle, but just pulling. So like this, and start wiggling it gently until you see it come apart. Here we go, and one more time. So close, and use your thumb here, push it on the button and start pulling. Obviously the more you do it, the looser the button is going to get, so try not to do it too much. Okay, so let's have a pink one here. Same principle. There we go, got it in. And the last one. So regarding measurements, if we use 8 segments, let's see what we've got. We have, the outer radius is 37.5 inches, which is 95.5 centimeters. The inner radius is 35 inches and 89 centimeters. And if we use some calipers, the thickness of these segments is 30 millimeters, which is 3 centimeters. Another beautiful thing about this, if we disconnect one of the segments carefully, you can actually pull it to make a smaller hula hoop. Now bear in mind, there is quite a bit of tension if you just use 7 segments. So whilst using PLA Plus, there is extra tension. It should be fine, but you do have a bit of a risk of a fracture at the joining points mostly, I would say. If you do get a fracture in the print or while you drop it, you could perhaps use TPU as a printing material. But with PLA Plus, I haven't had any problems with breakage. Like, look. It's a pretty durable material. And for measurements, let's have a quick look what it would be using 7 segments. So from one side to the other side, the outer radius is 33.5 inches, which is 84.5 centimeters, and on the inner radius is 32 inches at 81.5 centimeters. So it's pretty cool that you have the flexibility of using 2 different sizes with 8 or 7 segments. Okay, so a bit of a weird one. What do you guys think this is? But I find it's really impressive. So this is printing at 1 perimeter, 1mm width, 0 infill. Look at that, it's really interesting. And 0.3mm layer height. So this finishes in around, it's around 3 to 4 hours print in total. And it's got 8 segments, and it locks in place. And this is PLA Plus with fuzzy skin 0.3 on both settings. I forgot what the settings were though. And here we go. Oh man. Okay, so 4 of these tipped over all at the same place. And I'm very sure this is because I was using a 0.4mm nozzle to make a 1mm line. However, when I was using 0.4mm nozzle to make a 0.8, it was fine. But anything over 8 to 1mm, it just doesn't work. And it all done there at the same area. Fuck's sake, man. Both of the pink ones broke. See, the pink ones broke both in the same place. These were actually the first ones I printed, and these only used 1 perimeter at the head. So that was a mistake. You see, none of the other ones broke because they're using 2 or 3 perimeters.